It's the last day of the month. You open your banking app, you look at the balance, and your stomach drops a little. You made decent money this month. You didn't buy anything dramatic. No vacation, no big purchase you could point to and say, there, that's where it went. But it's gone. Quietly, invisibly, somehow gone. And then comes the familiar loop. You tell yourself next month will be different. You download a budgeting app, you set some categories. You last about 18 days before it quietly falls apart again. Here's what nobody tells you. That's not a willpower problem. It's not even a math problem. Your brain has a spending system, and it's running a program that was designed to meet a specific psychological need. The problem isn't that you lack discipline. The problem is you've been trying to fix the output without ever identifying the input. I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why smart, hardworking people keep ending up in the same financial place every month. If that's the kind of honest, no-nonsense conversation you want more of, subscribe and hit the bell. New videos every week.
Now, before we get into the 3 triggers, let me ask you something. Think about the last 3 things you bought that you didn't plan to buy. Not big purchases, small ones. The extra round of drinks, the online order at 11 p.m., the thing you added to the cart just because. What were you feeling right before you bought them? Because I think the answer is more specific than you expect. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. There are 3 core psychological triggers that drive most overspending. Almost everyone has a dominant one. And until you identify yours, every budget you try is just treating the symptom. The first is emotional spending. This is spending to regulate your mood. You had a hard day, a difficult conversation, a moment of stress or boredom or loneliness, and spending became the fastest available relief. It's not about the item. It's about the momentary shift in emotional state the purchase creates, the anticipation of the package arriving, the brief dopamine hit of clicking buy, the feeling of doing something for yourself when everything else felt out of control. The second trigger is identity spending.
This is spending to signal who you are, or who you want to be. The gym membership you maintain because you're someone who works out, even when you don't go. The expensive coffee because that's how you start your day. The clothes that project a version of yourself you're still building toward. Identity spending isn't vanity. It's deeply human. We use money to construct and communicate our self-concept. The problem is when the signal costs more than the reality can support. The third trigger is avoidance spending. This one is the most counterintuitive. Avoidance spending is when financial stress itself drives more spending, because the anxiety of looking at the real numbers is so uncomfortable that shopping becomes a way to not think about it. People who report high financial stress spend on average 20% more on discretionary items than people who don't. The problem is creating the solution that makes it worse. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because this is exactly where budgets fall apart. Budgets address the output. They tell you to spend less in category X, but they don't touch the input, the trigger that's generating the spending in the first place.
So what happens? You cut the spending. The need it was meeting doesn't go away. It surfaces somewhere else. A different category, a different purchase, the same underlying driver. You're not solving the program. You're just playing whack-a-mole with the symptoms. The substitution principle in behavioral psychology is clear on this. You can't reliably remove a behavior without replacing the need it was meeting. Which means the question isn't just, how do I spend less? It's, what is the spending doing for me? And what else could do that? For emotional spenders, the answer isn't a stricter budget. It's a menu of non-spending emotional regulation strategies that are actually accessible in the moment. A walk, a call to someone, a physical change of environment. Anything that creates a pattern interrupt between the trigger and the transaction. For identity spenders, the answer isn't cutting the categories. It's auditing which identity signals are actually load-bearing versus which ones are habitual and hollow. Most identity spenders find several $100s a month in spending that doesn't even accurately reflect who they currently are. It's just what they've always bought.
For avoidance spenders, the answer is radical transparency. making the numbers visible and regular enough that they lose their power to frighten. A weekly 10-minute money check-in does more for avoidance spenders than any budget ever will. Before you go, 2 things that keep people stuck. Mistake 1, reaching for another budgeting app. If budgets have failed you before, they didn't fail because the app wasn't good enough. They failed because they're the wrong tool for a psychological problem. You don't need a better spreadsheet. You need to identify your trigger. Mistake 2, cutting the spending without addressing the need. If you eliminate emotional spending cold and replace it with nothing, you are not solving the problem. You are building pressure. It will find a release valve, usually somewhere more expensive. The real reframe is this. You don't have a spending problem. You have an unmet need that spending has been efficiently solving. Name the need. Find a better solution for it that doesn't cost you $300 a month. Do the audit tonight. Pull up the last 3 months of statements. Don't categorize by type. Categorize by emotional context. What were you feeling?
What need were you meeting? The patterns will be obvious, and once they're obvious, they're workable. That's where this actually starts. If this reframed something for you, subscribe. I put out this kind of honest, data-backed financial content every single week. And drop your trigger in the comments. Emotional, identity, or avoidance. Let's talk about it.
If this made you think differently about money, follow Broke to Base. Real math, real talk, every week. Link in bio. See you next video.